Hey, what's going on, guys? In this tutorial, we're going to create an animated business logo like what you see here in the Wayfair commercial. We're going to try to mimic a lot of the details that you see here, like the different images popping up one after another, moving at different speeds, and then ultimately forming this square and then bouncing up. So with that said, let's go ahead and just take our Fusion composition clip straight to the Fusion page. The first thing we're going to do here is to bring in a background node. Then let's go ahead and bring in a polygon masking node. We're going to draw out the shape itself. This can be any shape you want, honestly. Here I'm just trying to mimic what we saw in the Wayfair commercial. The next thing we're going to do is to bring in a rectangle masking node, and then we're going to create basically a mask around the polygon masking node. So let's come to the polygon masking node, go to paint mode, change it to multiply, and let's adjust the size of the rectangle masking node a little bit there. Now if we come to the polygon masking node, keyframe the center parameter here, bring it down out of the frame, and then what we're going to do is to come over by about 10 or 15 frames. Now let's bring this back up, back into the frame. And then let's go move over by 10 more frames, bring this down, and then let's move over by 5 frames. We're going to bring this back to its original position, 0.5. So now let's come to the spline editor. We're going to adjust the interpolations between the frame. And now you will see we have this nice little bouncy motion going on here. And you can change the interpolation furthermore. This will really give us a nice, smooth, bouncy animation. All right, guys, let's come to the end of this part of the animation. Let's bring in a transform node. We're going to add that after the background node, and then we're going to first of all bring the size down. So let's bring that down quite a bit. And then you're going to see this animation looking very much like one of the shapes in the Wayfair commercial. All right, guys, so what we're going to do here is to come to the 60th frame. Then let's go ahead and keyframe the center parameter here. We're going to bring this over to the right side of the screen. Now let's come to the 75th frame there. Let's bring this over to the left. So this will give us kind of a nice movement along the straight line. All right, so if we were to have a look, this is kind of resembling the first part or the second part of the Wayfair commercial, which is the shapes moving along the straight line. Now let's go ahead and bring in a duplicate node. What we're going to do now is to change the number of copies to 4, and then we're going to change the x-axis of the center parameter, bring that down, and then this is, as you can see, going to allow the shapes, the duplicates, to shoot out to the left. Now, if we were to plate this, you will see that all these shapes are popping up at the same time, but we know that's not what we wanted. So what we're going to do is to come to time offset parameter, adjust that down to negative. We're going to stick with minus 3.31. So now, as you can see, these shapes will be popping up one after another. All right, guys, what we're going to do is to come to the 59th frame, keyframe, and then come to the 60th frame, bring this down to 0. What we're going to do now is to keyframe the center parameter, and then we're going to move over to the 75th frame. We're going to keyframe the center parameter again by bringing these shapes closer to each other, changing the x-axis. So now you guys will see that this very much resembles what we saw in the Wayfair commercial. These shapes will start off apart from each other, and then at the end of the straight line, they will move much closer towards each other. All right, guys, so now at the 75th frame, we're going to do the first thing we're going to do here is to keyframe the pivot parameter. So let's do that. Then we're also going to keyframe the angle parameter. So now let's move over just by 1 frame, and then let's keyframe the angle parameter by changing it to 90, and then let's also change the pivot or keyframe the pivot parameter by changing it. And then let's also pivot or keyframe the center parameter as well. Change it back to 0.5. Now we're just going to adjust the pivot parameter to the point where we can see that all these shapes are forming this perfect square. So that's what we're trying to do here. Now, once we have it, then let's actually check off the keyframe for center and also angle. Now let's move over to maybe the 90th frame here. We're going to once again keyframe center and then angle. And then we're going to, first of all, change the center parameter to 0.5. And then we're going to change the angle parameter here to 90. So now you guys will see that at the end of the straight line, these shapes are going to form this square. So the whole point, the most important point here, guys, is to keep in mind that we're trying to find that perfect pivot point where these shapes, these four shapes will form that perfect square. So now we've found that perfect pivot point. Let's continue to leverage it. So let's bring in a transform node. We're going to basically copy the pivot settings from the duplicate node onto the transform node. So let's do that for the x axis. First of all, copy and then paste it onto the transform pivot parameter there. Now let's do it for the y axis there as well. Copy and paste it onto the transform node. And then what we're going to do here is to keyframe the angle parameter, and then let's come to maybe the 95th frame there. We're going to keyframe the angle parameter again, but we're going to bring it up quite a bit here. So now the idea, as you can see, is that as the shapes are forming that square, it's also moving around as well. So it's more dynamic this way, and that's what we saw earlier in the commercial. All right, guys, another thing we're gonna do here is to start to move this up a bit. So now let's keyframe the center parameter at the 75th frame. Let's move over to the 95th parameter here, keyframe center parameter again by moving it up just a little bit. So I think that looks fine. So if we were to replay this part of the animation, you guys will see that not only is the shape formation dynamic, it's also moving up at the same time. So we're incorporating all these elements into this part of the animation. Now let's bring up the spline editor. So what we're gonna do here is to uncheck the angle setting. So let's change the interpolation for the center parameter here. Let's just change that. You guys will see that this will make the animation look a little bit better here. We can continue to play with the interpolation furthermore, and we can even bring it upwards. So now you guys will see that we have this little bouncy motion at the very end. So that's kind of a nice touch. All right, let's go ahead and just close the spline editor. And what we're gonna do, guys, is to have a look at the animation right now. You guys will see we pretty much have a good foundation build. We have a lot of the key elements nailed here at this point. Another key element we haven't yet addressed is the color of the shapes. So let's first of all go to media pool and bring in the original clip here. Let's change it to viewer, and then we're going to project this one onto the left. So now the first thing we're going to do, guys, is to go to the background node. We're going to use the eyedrop feature, select the one that's on the left. And then what we're going to do is to copy all these nodes, and then we're going to paste it and then connect it back as a foreground. So let's do that. And then what we're going to do is to come to this new duplicate node, change the copies to 3, and then we're going to change this new background node color to, well, we're going to use the eyedrop feature and then pick the color that's on the right. So let's do that. And now this is the second color. Let's continue to do this, copy and then paste it. We're just going to connect it back to the merge node as a foreground once again. Now let's once again go to this new duplicate node, change it down to 2 this time. And then let's go to the background node, use the eyedrop feature, select the purple color, the third one on the left. And then let's do this one more time. Let's copy and then paste it, and then connect it back to the merge node as a foreground. We're going to go to the duplicate node. This time, just change the number of copies to 1, and then we're going to go to the background node, use the eyedrop dropper, and then pick the yellow color that's on the right. All right, guys. So if we were to have a look at this animation right now, guys, the logo itself is pretty much completed at this point. Now let's go ahead and tackle the text animation. So we're going to bring in a text node here, connect it back to the merge node as a foreground, and then we're going to write our text out in the text box, change the font, and then we're also going to bring the size up a little bit there, just so that it looks proportionate to the logo itself. I think we can afford to bring it up furthermore. So let's do that. We're also going to adjust the tracking parameter there, and then continue to try to find the position of the text relative to the logo. So that's what we're trying to do here. It's just to find that position for the right position for that text. All right, so I think that looks okay. So we're gonna just go with that. And now, if we were to have a look, this looks pretty good. Next to the logo itself. Now that's also bringing now a rectangle masking node. Connect to the text node. We're just going to create a mask around the text itself. So now let's come to the text box or the text node. Go to the text box. Let's right click. And then we're going to go ahead and select the follower feature. Then let's go to the modifiers tab. So what we're going to do now is to go to the shading tab and then go to precision and offset. We're going to keyframe the offset parameter here at 75th frame. And let's go and move this text out of the masking node. So that looks good. Then let's move over to the 90th frame here. And then what we're going to do is just to bring this text back up. So now if we were to have a look at this part of the animation, it looks okay, but I think it might be coming up too soon. So let's go to the 95th frame here. Let's keyframe the offset setting, and then let's go back to the other one and check it off. So now you guys will see that this looks a little bit better. Okay, so we are gonna now go back to the timing tab and change the delay parameter here. Bring that down. So that these words will now be coming back up one after another. So minus 1.5 seems okay, but then let's go to the shading or the offset parameter, bring all these words completely out of the masking node. Okay, so now that looks much better. All right, let's come to spline editor. Now let's change the interpolations here. We're gonna bring actually the one on the right up a little bit, and then just change the one on the left a little. So now you will see that there's a little bit extra movement at the top there too because of that change we made. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's continue to adjust this one. We can make this a little bit more dramatic just by changing it up a little bit more. So now you will get a more dramatic effect here compared to before. Another thing we can change here is the opacity setting. So let's keyframe it, bring this down to 0, and then let's go to the 95th frame, bring this back up to 1. And then what we're gonna do is to tweak the maybe the offset setting a little bit there, since we're seeing a little bit of the text, of the words. So that looks good. So at this point, guys, I think this is pretty much it for the text part of this animation. It looks pretty decent, and what we're gonna do, or one thing we can also do here, is to change the size of the logo, because I think it still looks a little bit too big compared to the text. So let's add a transform node to all these nodes to the background here. Let's bring the size down, and let's move this logo over to the left a little bit. So now if we were to have a look, that looks much better. Let's also now add a background. And let's do that, bringing a background node, and then we're going to look at the original clip one more time. We're going to use just the eyedropper to select the purple background. So that's perfect. Now let's just take this whole thing, guys, back to the edit page, let the effect render. But this is pretty much it, guys. As you can see, our animation here looks very much like what we saw in the Wayfair commercial. I want to capture as much of the detail as I can, to show you guys how to do these things in Fusion, to show you the techniques and also the flow itself. So I hope this helps. As always, I will see you next time.